What's going on? Joe McCall here. Listen, have you ever read one of those articles, those hit pieces in the newspaper or online on whatever, MSNBC, CNN, and you read a article about something going on in the real estate space, or you read an article about some guru or somebody out there that is like, oh no. So here's the story. A few weeks ago, I was reading the Wall Street Journal and I saw this article about an apartment syndicator guru, somebody who invests in apartments and also teaches and educates the people how to do this. And I'd recognized his name before, and I was like, oh no. My heart sank. I was like, dang it, what's going on? Another hit piece. Because I don't remember, 4 or 5 months, 6 months earlier, there was another article in the Wall Street Journal about a guy who made some really stupid decisions and lost millions of dollars in some apartment buildings. And so part of me was wondering, I wonder if this is like a follow-up article to that. And so I was like, oh man, it's kind of like the way sometimes these newspapers do it. It's like tabloids, it's clickbait. They enjoy reveling in trashing people and making them look bad, right? For the clicks, anyway. I read this article, going through it's about it takes 10, 15 minutes to read. And after I was done, I was like, this was actually almost written like a promotional piece for this guy. And like, I got more excited about investing in apartments. I got excited about multifamily investing. And this, my show, we do mainly single family houses and vacant land, with wholesaling and things like that. And so I looked the guy up because I thought, oh no, he's probably, they talked about his, he kind of is a little flashy maybe on his Instagram and shows nice cars and stuff. So they talked about that. And well, I went to his Instagram channel thinking he probably took down his channel or he took down all of those posts. And no, he was still there. And he was still talking about what he's doing. So I started digging into this guy, and he's got a ton of success. And I just was texting my friend a little bit ago who has a lot of multifamilies. And he's like, yeah, Brad's a good guy. How cool you got him on your show. So anyway, long intro here. I want to bring on the one and only Brad Sumrok. Now, some of you guys have heard of Brad, but he is here in the house with us. Brad, how are you doing, my man?
Hey, I'm really good. I'm really good. And thanks for having me on.
Thank you for being here. Everybody, he stepped out of a big conference that he's at right now to spend some time with us on this podcast. So I really appreciate that. Brad, I just wanted to ask you a little bit about this article first, and then maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into the apartment business. But did your heart sink when you got a call from Wall Street Journal saying, hey, we want to interview you or ask you some questions?
Oh my God. Yeah. And let me just, I'm so glad you're asking, because I want to clear something up though. And Joe, have you ever seen, and I'm sure you have, but it's also for people listening, but have you ever been to somebody's like website or social media page and it says things like as seen on CNN, NBC, Fox News, all this type of stuff? Have you seen that, right?
Yeah, half the time it's BS, right?
Yeah, well, what it is, and there's nothing fundamentally wrong with it, but what it is most of the time is like paid sponsored ads,
yes.
And you could pay to be on TV or to be on the cover of a book or magazine or radio, TV, media. And so, it's a strategy that people use that want to get more attention and promote their business across the board, whether it's real estate or not. Yeah. And so, I've been investing in apartments since 2002, and I've been mentoring others for, a decade and a half.
Yeah.
And I could have only dreamed to be featured in national media. And believe me, I've tried, and I've had some paid spots on like local TV and stuff, but never was able to get the attention of like any national publication that was, had a lot of readers, a credible source, until something bad happened, of course. And then, I get this call, and I was like, I have been and am committed to the multifamily business for 22 years. I've done my best to be an incredible investor and a steward of my investors and the investments that I've made, and also to the people that I coach and mentor, and teaching them best practices and guiding them down the yellow brick road to success. And I've had a lot of success stories, and none of that ever made national media.
Yeah.
But one of my students that I had coached, earlier on, kind of went off his skis a little bit and went ahead and did a really big deal. And it was during the season that he was able to raise the money and get the debt and check all the boxes. And like you said, he made a lot of bad decisions, or even worse, and lost a bunch of people's money. And so that was in the Wall Street Journal back in like 2023. And they found out that I was his former coach. Yeah. And so they contacted me and wanted to see if I was going to comment on it. And like, I was scared. Like, I'm thinking like, man, my whole, 2 decades is about to be tested here. And what about my reputation and everything? All the good work that I did is going to be challenged or questioned. And I had a lot of anxiety and a lot of sleepless nights. And I asked 2 of my mentors, and I got different answers. And one was like, don't engage with the media at all. They're just going to manipulate you. And the other was like, yeah, you need a PR team. And I'm glad that I went with the second option, and I hired a PR team and fully engaged. And so at that article back in 2023, they were going to print a lot of bad things that they had heard about me just through a handful of people that invested with this guy, but they didn't. And basically all they printed was, I wear expensive suits, I have a Ferrari, and I have a vanity license plate. And honestly, all those things are true. So it kind of made me look like a douchebag, but they didn't publish anything else. And then fast forward in this year, in March of 2024, they call me again and they say, hey, we're going to do a deep dive into the multifamily syndication industry and on your role in popularizing it, because our research indicates that you, more than anybody else, has impacted like the average person to get into the multifamily syndication business. And so we're going to profile you and the business. And they told me up front, this is not going to be like a good article. Like, it's going to be a critical article, because they had a negative narrative from, some of the investors that lost money in this deal in 2023. Well,
and some other people, we won't name names, but, kind of rub people the wrong way, maybe a little bit.
Yeah. So, bottom line is, I was scared, I was nervous, but I fully engaged. And, I don't know if you want to ask me anything else, but there's a lot more to the story. But like you said,
you actually flew to New York and sat down with them.
Yeah. And this is an important lesson for everybody here. It's like, they offered me to, talk on the phone, but I made the decision and the request to have an in-person meeting. And one of the things that's important is that there's a hierarchy of communication. Like, if you want to have a maximum impact on somebody, and look, a lot of the people I coach are like, oh, it's tougher times now because of all the challenge in the industry. It's harder to raise money. And I'm like, they're trying to raise money the way they did 3 years ago through email blasts, or text messaging. And I'm like, you got to get in front of people. So the hierarchy of influence is an in-person meeting. And the second would be like a Zoom meeting where you could connect with people through all the senses. And the third would be a phone call. And the worst is like email and texting. So, rather than do a phone call, I went up there and it was going to be a 1-hour interview. And it literally turned into a 4-hour meeting where we really connected. And I was scared to go in, and I prepared for it like it was the biggest interview of my life. But the guys doing the work at the Journal were, young guys, and they're great guys. And I, to this day, I feel like it was a great experience. And I kind of feel that we became friends. I don't want to use that term lightly, but we became positive acquaintances with each other. And I learned about the guy that was held hostage, what's his name, Evan Gershowitz, that was just released. I learned about that because they had posters of him all over their offices. And it was just a phenomenal experience. And they learned that I was very committed to the business, and I was very committed to the people I coach and mentor, and that I was also committed to their project that they were working on, because I took the time and energy and expense to fly there and stay overnight. And that took, 2 days of my life and several $1,000s. Well,
and I thank God you did. I mean, the article was fair. I thought it was very fair. And you even interviewed some of your successful students that have done deals that are doing well today. It talked about, you gave some real good answers, because, everybody's talking about it in the news now with the interest rates going up, and, what's going to happen with all of these apartment owners and stuff like that. But you gave some really good feedback, and it ended the article with everybody needs a place to live. And so there will always be a demand for multifamily housing. I thought the article was really good. I was so pleased after I read it. And, there was some few things, a few little punches in there that I thought maybe weren't fair, but overall, I was glad.
Hey,
this
look,
article.
Me too. Overall, yeah. So at the end of that interview, they asked me, they said, "Hey, do you have any students that have had positive experience with your program that would be willing to talk to us?" And those are two questions. I have hundreds of students that have had amazing positive results with my program, but I wasn't sure any of them were going to talk to the media. And that was a whole nother question. So I remember going home, Joe, and I made a list of over 100 people that, right off the top of my head, that we've helped massively and moved the needle in their life financially, in a big way, hundreds of them. And then I started calling people and I would kind of set the framework and hey, the journal's talking to me and here's what they're working on. And then I was like, would you be willing to talk to them about your experience? And the first person I asked said yes. And they were like, "Yes, Brad, you've changed my life so much and me and my family." And then the next person said yes. And the next person said yes. And the next person said yes. And after 12 people, I had 11 yeses out of 12. And one person was like, "I got to talk to my partner." But, so at the end of that day, I broke down in tears. I just felt so grateful that my students were willing to go out on a limb. And there is risk involved when you're talking to national media. But 11 out of 12 that I had asked said yes. And the Journal only talked to, not all of them because I guess they got enough from talking to 6 or 7 of them. And then they published, quoted 4 of them, but they talked to a lot more than 4.
Wow. Good for you. Here's the thing, and I've said this many times, and this is a podcast about real estate investing. We teach people how to do their first deal, right? But I'm always coming to the defense of gurus, and there's some guys out there that aren't any good, right? But I say this, thank God for the gurus. Thank God for the Carlton Sheets, the Ron Allen, what's his name? Robert Allen, those guys were putting themselves out there. And they got attacked a lot. They were on TV, and it was because of some guy that bought that program, made some money, right? Became a coach, became a guru, taught somebody else, who taught somebody else, who taught me, and I was able to learn how to do this business. And then I'm thankful and grateful for guys like you, Brad, who you put your neck on the line. You make good money doing what you do, but you deserve every penny of it. You've worked hard. And when you become out, put yourself in the public like that and do big events like what you do, and you take as many clients on as you do, you're taking a huge risk with the regulatory authorities, the government, the public, the social media stuff. So I'll stand up and say, hey, I'm grateful for gurus. I'm grateful for Brad Sumroks.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And let me share with you, I am too, because I wouldn't be anywhere near where I'm at if it wasn't for my mentors. And just to share about that, I have an engineering degree and an MBA, worked in corporate America 17 years. And if it wasn't for Robert Kiyosaki writing his books, those books changed my life because I remember him saying things like formal education will get you a job, which I had 2 degrees. And I was unfulfilled and lost my job twice in 17 years. But specialized education, like the type you'll get in conferences and seminars and masterminds, can earn you a fortune. And that set me in the direction to find real estate conferences and mentorship. And I went to a program in 2001, back in Houston, Texas. And there was a guy that put himself out there to teach and mentor other people. And I had success in that program. And then I went to Tony Robbins in 2006. And I'm actually at a Tony Robbins event right now, and I'm in my hotel room. But it's Tony's been under attack. It's like anybody. Grant Cardone's been under attack, and these people, they all have strengths and weaknesses, like all of us as humans. Yeah. But they put themselves out there, and they also develop haters, and it's tough, to put yourself out there and try to impact people. But I could just say, if it wasn't for these people, I still might be like in corporate America for, now like
Yeah,
37
exactly.
years and have been on like 10 different jobs, like, and still trying to climb the corporate ladder and achieve
Yeah.
financial independence.
And if you don't have any haters, it makes you wonder if you're doing something wrong. Uh, because that's what it takes sometimes. If you want
Yeah.
to put yourself out there and make a difference and have an impact in the world, not everybody's going to like it.
Yeah.
So Brad, can I ask you a couple quick questions? I want to ask you about how'd you get into multifamilies and apartments, and then I want to ask you kind of like what's the state of the market today? You hear doom and gloom all over the place, but how did you come into multifamily investing?
Yeah. So I came into multifamily and I'm glad you asked, and I already started, explaining this, but I never thought I would be doing real estate. Like, my parents never finished college, and they and my dad's boss was an engineer. So like, I grew up in Pittsburgh, and they were like, you got to study hard, get good grades, go to college, save your money, get a job, and work for corporate America and retire. And so I followed that map. It was a blueprint of success that I was able to follow because that's what my parents taught me. But again, after 17 years in corporate America, I lost my job not one time, but two times. And I was in my early 30s, and I started getting worried and fearful and desperate. Plus, I didn't really love what I was doing, and, worked for 5 different companies in that time period. And so when I picked up the Rich Dad, Poor Dad book, it gave me a different roadmap. And that roadmap was, instead of being an employee with an aspiration to be self-employed, you could be a business owner and investor. And that was the cash flow quadrant with ESB and I, employee, self-employed, business owner, investor. And that gave me the idea to seek out a different type of education, the type of education you get from mentors, conferences, mastermind events. And so I did that with real estate. And I went there and I was skeptical. Like, my first conference I went to, I was in the back of the room thinking, like, what am I going to learn here? And by day 2, I was in the front row taking notes. So not only did I go to a real estate event, I bought a mentorship program. That's how I started. Is I bought a program, and it worked. I went out and took action, and I implemented, and that's one of my skill sets. Is I don't go to conferences and just learn. I go to conferences and I learn, and then I take action. And I make shit happen. I do. Like, that's one of the secrets to success is you got to learn. But if you just learn and don't take action, that the knowledge is not power. Knowledge plus execution is power. So I took action, and my first deal was a 32-unit deal. It wasn't a single family rental, a fourplex, a duplex, a 10-unit. I put a lot of money, virtually most of the money I had saved in those 14 to, I started with 14 years of corporate America. And then I worked 3 more years. And after 3 years of real estate investing, I quit my job. So I started in 2002 with 14 years of corporate America. And in 2005, I was doing corporate and real estate investing. And in 2005, I quit my job for good, retired at the age of 38. And I had 62 apartment units. And that's all it took for me to quit my job, was 62 units. And now I had owned those properties 100%. So I was not yet syndicating. Okay. And how I got into syndication, Joe, is that when I had these 62 doors, a broker brought me a 250 unit deal, and I had no money because all my money was tied up in these 62 units, right? I bought them with all my own money.
So can I ask, the first units that you buy, did you still use leverage, banks?
Yeah, I put 20% down and got an 80% loan in 2002 to buy 32 units. And let me guess what my interest rate was when I bought that 32 unit building and got an $800,000 loan.
2002, 12%.
No, it was 6.4%, which is lower than it is, which is about what it is right now, by the way. But right now, everybody thinks it's super high, but it's only high relative to the super low rates that we had, 2 or 3 years ago.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So a broker brought you a bigger deal, and all of a sudden you had a problem. You needed to raise more money.
Yeah. And look, and it's only because I had invested in myself. I joined the mentorship program, and from that program, I was, there were networking events, and there was a community of investors. And so when I showed up and I got to know people. So people knew me as the guy that had 32 units and then 62 units. And they would say things like, "Hey, Brad, like you get another deal. I want in on it. I want in on it." And you're thinking, yeah. But then all of a sudden I get this deal. And so the short story is I raised $2 million from 27 people,
Whoa.
So people were like, "How do you raise money, Brad?" And look, you raise money by going out there, doing the work, connecting with people, sharing with people what it is that you're doing, having some success. And so it's not like I just started from scratch and somebody brought me a deal and the numbers look good. And then I'm like, oh shit, like I got to go scramble and talk to people. It's like, no, I was talking to people for 2 or 3 years, in this investor club that I was a member of.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So you raised the money. Now, the original program you invested in, was that a multifamily apartment program?
It was not. It was they taught single family rentals and multifamily rentals. So it was not.
And they're out of Texas, and they're based out of Texas. I know who they are.
Yeah, I don't mind saying it because I give them a lot of credit. It was Lifestyles Unlimited, and some people are like, "Brad, they're still in business, and why do you talk about your competitor?" Because it's true. It's like I don't mind. Joe, one of my pet peeves is when people started with a mentor and then they're interviewed like on a podcast or they have a blog or they write a book and someone asks how you got started and they don't tell the truth. They say, I read some books and went to some meetups. And it's like, no, you didn't. Cause like I don't mind saying I'm at a Tony Robbins event right now. Like invest in mentors. It works.
Yeah. It's funny that you were talking about you jumped right in, you were starting to implement right away. I was a little bit the opposite. I was an engineer background, but like I was a professional student for 3 years before I actually started taking action and buying, implementing the courses that I was buying. Cause I got sick and tired and fed up of spending more money on my education than I was making on deals. Yeah. And one of the guys' courses I bought was a good friend of mine today, Chris Chico. And I said, I'm going to buy one more program and I'm just going to do what this guy says to do. And I'm not going to change anything. I'm not going to question it. I'm just going to do it blind faith. I'm going to jump off the building and figure out how to fly as I fall. I'm just going to trust this guy. Well, anyway, fast forward a couple months, I made my first deal, made 12 grand, just doing what he said to do. And I remember that feeling of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. It works. Like it actually works. It really does. That was one of the best days of my life. I could not get over the excitement of seeing it work. Right? I believed it could work for everybody else, but not for me.
Well, look, man. Tony Robbins, for example, he's got a saying that is so true: "Success leaves clues." If you want to be successful, like you could figure it out on your own, but it might take you a decade. But if you leverage somebody else's experience, see, everybody in real estate hears about OPM, other people's money. But what about leveraging OPE, other people's experience? Other OPT, other people's time. Yeah. Like this is a way to collapse decades, like turn decades into days. And so, like, again, I know and you didn't ask me, but the other reason I'm not concerned about talking about how I started is like, I'll put my program up against anybody's out there. Like the Wall Street Journal didn't feature, anyone else that's doing multifamily education. They featured me because I've done more for people that are investing in multifamily than anyone else out there. And it's quoted in the journal. And that's why, like, I don't want to brag, but like they called me America's apartment king. Yeah. And the nickname that I got, apartment king, I didn't give it to myself. Like some of my clients and a friend of mine that also has a big podcast was like, hey, he actually called me the king of apartments. And that wouldn't fit on a license plate, but APTKING actually does fit on a license plate. And so That's how the Apartment King nickname came about.
Nice.
Yeah.
I have two friends who do a lot of multifamily apartments, and I've texted them both saying, hey, I'm interviewing this guy. And they're like, oh, he's awesome. That's great. Good for you. Okay. So can we talk about the market cycles? Everybody's talking about it in the news, and it's like, personally, I'll admit, like a couple of years ago when I saw interest rates going up and I saw some of the deals that my friends were buying, or I heard about people that were syndicating, I was like, this does not make any sense. Like, what's going on? So where are we at in the market? And by the way, you got started about 5-6 years before the Great Recession. Can you put what's going on now, maybe in context of what's happened before and what we're going through?
Yeah. And look, I mean, I'm not like an economist or like an expert in capital markets and Fed policies and stuff, but I do study it. And I was like, as you mentioned, I got started in multifamily in 2002. And so, I remember closing a deal in April of 2008. And by October of 2008, like the bottom dropped out. And one of the properties that I just bought was in Houston, Texas. And so anyone that was living in Houston in 2008 remembers Hurricane Ike. So not only did like the economy just drop really fast and we went into a fast recession, but a property that I owned got hit with Hurricane Ike, and we had 40% of the units down means like uninhabitable from a hurricane. And so I remember this one deal, like I literally put in hundreds of thousands of dollars of my own money to pay the bills and keep it going. And this was, a syndication where I had a lot of investors, and I was the only general partner. So like, if it wasn't for me putting in the money, I would have either had to do a capital call or turn the keys in to the bank. And so I was fighting the recession and the huge insurance claim. And it took me 14 months to get insurance money. And so this is why and so, one of the similarities, Joe, back then and now is, yes, there are deals that are underwater, and underwater means like, let's say I bought a $10 million deal and got an $8 million loan. And the plan was to, raise the value through, NOI appreciation from 10 million to 14 million, and then get a new loan, at a 70% LTV, and you pay off the 8 million and you get an $11 million loan.
Well, and the first loan is like a temporary short-term loan, right?
Yes.
And the goal is to refinance it into a more longer-term loan.
Yes. But what happened is that $10 million property, if you look at NOI, NOI is income minus expenses. And so what's happened is a lot of expenses have gone up, okay? And it's not just interest rate. So there are people that are in variable rate loans where these loans are coming due. And so, but what if taxes went up? In certain markets, like taxes doubled or insurance doubled, or maybe not taxes doubled, but taxes went up. After COVID, rents went up. And then after 12 months after rent went up, taxes went up because taxes are based on property values. So, we had taxes going up. We have insurance going up in Texas and Florida and other markets. We have supplies going up. The pandemic created a whole slew of problems, and inflation, higher interest rates. I bought a 300 unit deal with some other partners. And when we bought it, we budgeted $1,800 to replace appliances in every unit. And now it's like $3,500 to replace appliances in every unit. So like costs just skyrocketed, and so it's not just variable rate loans. That's part of it with rising interest rates, but it was also rising taxes, rising insurance, rising payroll, rising maintenance costs, rising supply costs. And at the same time, Joe, we had a lot of new supply coming on because during the pandemic, a lot of these new development projects got delayed. And so right around the third quarter of 2022, around 2 years ago from where we're at today, all these problems started happening. The Fed started raising rates, inflation started going off through the roof, and all the supply came on. So we were in like a negative perfect storm. So the last 2 years have been a tough season for multifamily, and it's created a lot of challenges. And again, the challenges are on the income side and on the expense side. And what I see happening is that there's a lot of deals where the income is performing really well, meaning like we're hitting or even beyond our pro forma rents, but we have an expense problem. And I think those deals are going to be okay as long as we can get through the storm. There's some other deals where if the expenses have gone up and the income isn't hitting the numbers, those deals could have more challenges,
What these short-term, these loans, I don't know what they're called. I sometimes heard them as bridge loans or some kind of like.
Yeah.
Okay. But what happens when those become due? Does the bank?
So, and look, I'm in 37 syndications right now, and I have 3 or 4 that are in these situations. So like when the 3-year loan is up, and I just was interviewed on another show, and I went through this yesterday. So here's what the GP team should do, and the GP team are the investors that lead the deal and make the decisions. So number one, when the loan is up, you could evaluate selling the deal. Now, when the deal is projecting as planned, it's going to be worth more in 3 years than it is when you bought it. But again, because of all the rising costs and the new supply, in this moment of time, a lot of deals are worth less now than it was 3 years ago. So if you sell, you're probably going to lose investors' money, some of it or all of it. Okay, so that's one option, is do we sell? The other one is refinance. Again, if the deal performed as projected, it's going to be worth more. And so you could get a new loan that pays off the old loan. But if it's worth less, you get a new loan, but it's lower than the original loan. And so you actually have the opposite, which is a cash in refinance as opposed to the projected cash out refinance. And so there's a lot of equity groups out there right now, and I'm talking across the board. I'm not just talking like Sumrok students. Like Sumrok students, there's a lot of us that are doing really well, and we own like billions of dollars of apartments, but we make up a small fraction of like, the apartment owners in the country, as do syndicators, by the way. So, bottom line is there's a lot of people that are having to refinance these loans and having to raise money from capital calls or even get private equity groups to come in and put in more money to these deals. So again, you could sell it, you could refinance it, and or you could extend the loan. So all these bridge loans are 3-year loans with an option to extend for year 4, and then another option to extend in year 5. But to extend, you have to meet certain performance criteria. So like, and I've done all 3 of these. Like I bought a deal in 2021, and one of my deals has performed so well that we actually did a cash out refinance, which in this market cycle is extremely rare. So that was a huge win. I'm in another deal where I bought in 2021, and because it's performed well enough, we were able to extend this 3-year loan, and we're getting year 4 added on. But we had to meet certain performance metrics, but we met that. Okay, so that's a good outcome as well. And I'm in another deal, and again, people focus on the one negative, but I'm in another deal, a handful, like less than a handful out of 37, where we had to go back to the investors and raise more money. And so we've done that too, but the deal is performing well on the income side. I mean, it's in the path of progress. There's a lot of jobs being created. The supply is going down. And so by, owning an apartment building is owning a business. It's owning a business. And people think that they could get into business without risk or just delusional. And I always taught about the risks, and I still do. Like I talk about the upside and the potential risks. So any business at some point in time may need extra capital. And so there are some deals right now because of a lot of reasons. Some of the reasons are operator error, meaning like the people that own it made bad decisions. And some of the reasons are not because they made bad decisions, but because the market turned. And like, look, anybody that says now, they should never get variable rate loans. Honestly, I would say that is not accurate, because over time, and I've been doing this 22 years, variable rate loans on average have been much more profitable than fixed rate loans, because people don't consider the prepayment penalties on these fixed rate loans, which could be huge. And so, you know what, Joe, investors and humans in general, we tend to have very clear memories of short-term events like, syndication is risky and variable rate loans are bad and you should never get variable rate loans. But honestly, like I would debate that with people over and over again, because there are situations where you should get a fixed rate loan and there are situations where you should get a variable rate loan.
Yeah. Yeah. So the guy who was featured in an article a year ago, what are some of the mistakes he made in that situation? Is that okay to talk about?
Yeah. And part of it, and this is one of the things that I loved about the journal, is they committed to be fair and balanced, and they were. That person, like, I didn't mentor him on that deal. Like, I mentored him on previous deals, but when he went to do that deal, he didn't ask me for mentoring, you know? And so, and had he asked me, we may have had a chance to influence some of the things that he did. Okay.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is what I heard. And so some of these things is I'm not his business partner. I was his coach. Okay. And what that means is, like, I don't have access to his company agreements, his private placements, his securities documentation. Like, that's his business.
Yeah.
I'm his coach. And so, I didn't coach him to do the things that he did that caused him to make a lot of mistakes. Okay. And I'm clear about that. And so,
Yeah.
but some of the things that I heard is like, okay, he didn't have much of an infrastructure. Like, if you're going to go out and buy 3,000 units in one transaction, you need to have a deep team, like asset managers, people that focus on the asset, managing the asset. What I heard is he didn't have that. He had like a couple VAs that were living in another country, and he really focused a lot of his time and energy on learning to build a capital raising machine. So, like, he became really good at raising money digitally, through social media and email and stuff like that. And this is a concern, by the way, because going upstream from this, Joe, it's like, it occurs to me that everybody wants to be an expert without doing the work, and there's a lot of gurus that even teach that, fake it till you make it, Experts Academy. How do you be an expert? You need to be on TV, radio, newspaper, magazine, write a book, start a podcast, grab somebody's attention and fake it till you make it. And like, I didn't do that. Like, I've been investing in apartments for 22 years. I don't have a book. It's half written. I haven't started the podcast yet, although honestly, I'm starting one now, and I'd love to have you on my show, by the way.
Oh, come on. Yeah.
But like he in the beginning, he went slow and was very coachable, but then he went from like, in driving a car analogy, he went from like 0 to 20 miles per hour very slowly and thoughtfully. Yeah. But then he tried to go from 20 to 120 way too fast without the infrastructure and without a team of advisors. And so, but without, other than that, like, I'm not like in his day-to-day. I wasn't an investor in the deal. I wasn't a general partner in the deal. So I wasn't involved in like his day-to-day and strategic decisions or misdecisions that he made that caused that business to go under. Like how he allocated the capital and the management company that he hired and the team of people that he hired or didn't hire. Like, I don't have access to all that information, but it occurs to me that he made bad decisions around those topics.
The few friends I have who have a lot of multifamily investments, that's their number one struggle, challenge. The hardest thing to corral and get is the people management, the property management, managing the people, the team, doing the work like you're talking about, right? What are some of the things that you do on your deals? Do you have a national property management company that works with you on all your deals? Or do you work with local property management companies where each apartment building is at?
Yeah. So the answer is the second. So like, well, here's what I do. Number one is when I invest into a multifamily syndication, more often than not, I'm a general partner, which means I'm on the, think about there's a passive investor and there's an active investor. And so let's say there's 20 people that put their money, time, and resources together and go out and buy a property. You could have one of those 20 is the sole general partner, but maybe you have 3 of the 20. And I like the 3 of the 20 model because, Joe, we can divide and conquer the work, meaning like somebody's got to find the deals, analyze the deals, raise the money, secure the debt, manage the asset, manage the investors, manage the CapEx, right? And so in the beginning, when I started syndicating, I did all of that myself, but I found that it was hard to grow and scale. And so what I started doing is I'm really diligent about the people that I general partnership with. And we call that a co-GP, like a co-general partner. And so like, I'm in 37 deals right now, and a handful of them have some challenges, but I can tell you where we don't have challenges is our GP team is in alignment, even in the midst of challenges and maybe some financial struggles on 3 or 4 deals that I'm in with out of 37, which by the way, isn't that bad, if you think about it. But like, we're all still working together. We're pulling the same direction. We're not infighting. And that's not true with some people that have, they had a poor vetting process on how to vet their co-general partners in terms of their experience, their character, their values, their liquidity, what they're willing to do during adverse times. And what they found is when adversity hit the deal, like, lack of performance or lack of cash or lack of whatever, they weren't in alignment, and they didn't agree on how to solve the problem. And so you had some people in that GP team, wanting to do this, and maybe others wanting to do that. And so like, I'm not having that experiences with any of my partners. Okay. So the selection process of who you invest with is sometimes it's just as important or sometimes more important than the property that you invest in. Okay.
Interesting. So you're picking your co-GPs before the deals even.
Well, that's one of my recipes for success is I teach that, like, so that's one. And then number two is like, the selection and vetting of your property management company. And so, no, I don't have a national company that runs all my deals because it's not a one size fits all approach. Like the company that's managing our Nashville deal is not the same one that's managing the Houston deal. And it's not the same one managing the Dallas deal.
Yeah.
And the ones that manages our Class A property in Dallas is not the same one that manages our B and C class property in Dallas, because these are different types of assets. And so you want to match up the management company with the asset and the business plan and make the best selection. And so that's the second thing I do. And the third is you got to keep your eye on the ball. Like it occurs, and I could be wrong, but it occurs to me that like Jay probably wasn't, he probably didn't make the best selection of property management companies. He didn't have the right team in place, at least in my opinion, from what I've heard. And he probably wasn't paying attention to the financial performance, or maybe he didn't understand how to read financial statements and really assess how the deal was performing. Yeah. If you don't understand, it's not just, rent income and occupancy. It's like you have income, you have expenses, you have NOI, and then you have below the line, you have your debt payment, you have your CapEx, you have, there's a big difference between NOI and cash flow, and it's not the same thing. And and I teach this stuff, but yet it's, the general partners are accountable for that. And they're also accountable for selecting the right debt. Like I've talked to my students over and over again about fixed rate debt, variable rate debt, getting options from an industry expert, like a commercial lender that's going to say, hey, here's an option for this type of debt. Here's an option for this type of debt. And then match the debt to the business model and select the right debt. And so it occurs to me that like he didn't do that.
Yeah. Okay. We just got a few minutes left. My apartment buddies were asking me to ask you a couple questions here real quick. How are you recommending, or how are you sourcing deals in this crazy competitive market right now? Are you still looking for deals today?
Of course, because, and I can tell you this, there's less competition now than I've seen in a decade. Mm-hmm. Okay. So like, I truly believe that this is a time to get in. Like, imagine it's 2011, Joe. Imagine it's 2011 or 2010. Like, okay. I don't know anybody that says, man, I wish I would have invested less in that bottom of the market cycle. But at the same time, like I was buying a deal in 2011 and there were some that called me crazy. They said things like, Brad, you're catching a falling knife. How do you know it's at the bottom? Like, wait for things to turn around. And I'm here to tell you that once things do turn around, there's trillions of dollars or maybe hundreds of billions of dollars of dry powder that's sitting on the sidelines. And then when you see like Blackstone and KKR and these big REITs buying billions of dollars of multifamily, it might be something for you to pay attention to and say, hey, what are these big companies know that we don't know. And so it occurs to me that we're at or near the bottom of a market cycle, at or near, and I don't know exactly where we're at, but when you're at or near the bottom, it's in those transactional moments, it's tough because there's no, investors are skittish and debt is more expensive, or maybe there's less loan dollars available. And so it makes it harder to transact. But if you do find a transaction, you're going to get a deal of a decade. And so
Nice.
right now I'm looking for deals of the decade, because once they start cutting interest rates, and this is my crystal ball, by the way, and I could be wrong, the Fed is going to cut interest rates in September. They may cut it again by the end of the year. That's going to create a lot of momentum for multifamily, because it's going to lower the cost of debt and it's going to make transactions more doable again. And then we're going to have an election. And either way, by the way, capital markets and Wall Street and the way things work in our economy likes stability, and they like predictability, and they like certainty. So whether we have a Trump administration or a Harris administration, once that election is done, we're going to have at least 3 years of stability. Now, this could be offset by like World War III, or like a Middle Eastern conflict that broadens, or a Ukraine-Russia conflict that broadens. And so there's things that could derail things. But, outside of those type of situations, or another black swan event, like, we're going to enter into a period of certainty and stability and predictability. And we're going to see good times for multifamily. And that's why I'm really excited about right now. Nice. And I'm looking for deals of a decade, like within the next 12 months.
I love that. So you're definitely bullish. Okay, one more question from my friend. Can you talk about the state of the market in terms of the A, B, and C class? What kind of deals are you wanting to go after?
Well, I've always preferred B and C. And the reason is, I was just in Austin, Texas a couple of days ago. You take a picture of the skyline and buildings that go up and down like this, where you see cranes on the top. These are A-class buildings that are in the most affluent neighborhoods. Okay. And so imagine I have a property, Joe, or we have a property that was built in 2014 that's in downtown Austin. And there's tens of thousands of new inventory coming online. Like, you're competing with those people. But you go 20 minutes away from downtown Austin in the, economically and ethnically diverse neighborhoods that has a mix of all different types of people, and people making 40, 50, 60,000 a year, families of four. You don't see these types of buildings, and you don't see cranes. You see buildings going this way that are 2 or 3 stories, and you don't see any new inventory coming online. And I like those buildings, and I still like them. And so what happened, though, prior to 2022 is cap rates for A, B, and C properties, there is a wide spread. Like, maybe you could buy a C class at a 7 cap, and a B class at a 5.5 cap, and an A class was a 4 cap. And by 2022, that all compressed, where like an A class was a 3 cap and a B class was a 3.5 cap, and people were paying 4 caps for C class. And so that's called cap rate compression, where they all kind of got close. And so what a lot of people did, Joe, is they said, well, hey, I might as well buy the A class because there's not a big spread between these cap rates. But now we're seeing the spread happen again. Okay. And so we're seeing things spread out a little bit more between a spread between an A, B, and a C. But to me, and there's pros and cons for having A, Bs, and Cs, but I really like what I would call the B class or C plus class, like these Cs that are in still safe communities next to schools and churches with population growth and jobs being created. Yeah. And so that's always been my bread and butter. And I just responded to a LinkedIn post the other day where people were talking about, like, Jay Parsons who's an industry analyst, was talking about hey, everyone's trying to buy A-class properties. And I'm like, I'll buy the Bs and Cs any day of the week. And I still will.
Nice. Good. Mr. Brad Sumrok, thank you so much for being on my show. I'm humbled, honored. How can people reach you? And where do you like to send people to?
Yeah, well, hey, look, so my website is bradsumrok.com. There's no C in my last name, so it's just BRADSUMROK.com. Same thing for LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Brad Sumrok. And so that's where I like to send people to, Joe. And I also like to mention my 3-day event coming up in September. And if I could send you some a URL for that, it's a 3-day event, and I'm going to be teaching a lot of what it is that I do. So
well, go ahead and give me that, and I will. I'll put it on the podcast, the notes, the descriptions, and all of that. What is it?
It's a 3-day event. It's called Apartment Investor Mastery. It's funny because my company name is actually Sumrok Multifamily Mentoring, but I don't use that for branding. So most people know me by Brad Sumrok, but then our programs are called Apartment Investor Mastery, is like a global umbrella. And you see your podcast is Real Estate Investing Mastery. And so it's called AIM, Apartment Investor Mastery, AIM, NAT for National, CON for Conference. And it's my 7th annual AIM NatCon in Dallas, Texas, September 27, 8, and 9.
There it is. How about that? AIM, NATCON. And the dates again are?
September 27 through 29 in Dallas, Texas. And it's an in-person event only. No virtual, no, this is not a hybrid event where you could watch it from home this year. We're not doing that this year. Good.
All right. Thank you again, Brad. Appreciate you. Get back to the conference. Hopefully, when Tony does these things, he's probably, it's 4:00 now Central Time. He's probably going to be done midnight, right? So you got lots of drinks.
Midnight would be an early night. Yeah.
All right. Thank you again, sir. Appreciate you.
Hey, thanks for having me.
We'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.